Death at Gallows Green, Chapter 18. Policemen are but men, their pay but scanty, their situations precarious, and it would be too much to expect that all are so pure as to decline to make a little money when favourable opportunities present themselves. St. James Magazine, 1865. The twin villages of Manningtree and Mistley lay at the mouth of the River Ster, where it ceased to be a well-defined river and lost itself among the reeds of Seafield Bay, sheeting like hammered silver across Jacks and Copperas and Holbrook Bays, and thence into Harwich Harbour before spilling into the stormy grey waters of the English Channel. At Manningtree and Mistley, the upper reaches of the Stour estuary were deep enough to accommodate ocean-going vessels, and as Charles rode down the hill and through the twisting streets into the town, he could see the forest of masts along the quay. The air had a salt taste, and gulls wheeled over a recently arrived fishing boat, raising a hungry clamour. The police station and gaol were in the rear of a plastered building at the foot of Wharf Street, which housed an apothecary's shop in the front and a dentist and doctor's office above. Charles reached it by taking the cobbled alley to the rear and stooping under a low lintel. A narrow hallway gave directly onto a square room with one window and a barred cell at the back, quite chilly, where the atmosphere was acrid with coal smoke. A uniformed man was down on both knees, putting a light to a coal grate. He scrambled to his feet when Charles came in. "Sir Charles Sheridan," Charles said in a crisp, old-school voice. He did not offer his hand. "You're P.C. Bradley, I assume?" "I am," said the constable. He was a smart-appearing young man with pale grey eyes and blonde hair combed slickly back. He had a certain arrogance, as if he were accustomed to having attention paid to him. He was, however, at some little disadvantage, for he was bootless. "Can I help you with something?" he asked, somewhat carelessly. "I wish to speak with you." The constable's eyes measured the distance to his boots, which stood on the other side of the grate drying, apparently deciding that he could not surreptitiously retrieve them, and muttered, "Excuse me," reached for them and took the required measures to put them on. Appropriately attired, he went behind his desk and asked with a curl of his lip, "In regard to what business?" "The death of Sergeant Oliver." The constable's jaw visibly tensed. "I have no information on the matter," he said stiffly. Charles sighed. He did not want to be coercive, but now he had no choice. He pulled himself up in a barrister-like stance. "I wish you to tell me," he said, "on whose authority you recently invaded the home of Sergeant Arthur Oliver and removed 2 hares and a net from a shed." P.C. Bradley's eyes blinked rapidly. "I'm not at liberty to give information about a current investigation to—" Charles held up his hand. "You are aware, are you not," said he coldly, "that the rights of property are jealously guarded by the law of England?" "Well, and that any unwarranted interference with the rights of property, even by police, is a tort for which an action can be brought." The young man's eyes went from one side to the other. "But I understood that—" "Just how was it," Charles asked, "that you determined it necessary to search the sergeant's property?" The PC's mouth twitched. He wore a concerned look. "I was given intelligence that I would find evidence of wrongdoing on the part of—" "You were given intelligence," Charles said with a heavy emphasis. "Pray, Constable Bradley, who gave you this intelligence?" The constable swallowed. "I cannot say, sir." "You will not say?" "I cannot." The PC's voice had become shrill. He made an effort to bring it down a notch. "It was in a letter, sir." "A letter," Charles said. The colour he gave to the word implied doubt as to the constable's veracity. "I don't suppose you are still in possession of this, vital evidence?" P.C. Bradley hesitated, obviously of 2 minds about the matter. He took 3 indecisive steps to a nearby table, opened a drawer, and took out an envelope. As Charles held out his hand, he made a move to draw it back, but Charles persisted. "Oh, very well," P.C. Bradley said irritably. "I don't suppose it can do any harm for you to see it." The envelope was directed in sloping hand to Police Constable Bradley, Wharf Street, Manningtree. The B was shaped with a flourish, and the T's were crossed with decorative twists. The envelope had not been posted. "How was this delivered?" "Don't know." The PC was sullen. "Found it in the door yesterday." Charles opened the envelope and found inside a folded sheet of plain white paper, upon which was written in the same hand that had directed the envelope to the terse intelligence that if PC betook himself speedily to the shed behind the home of the recently deceased Sergeant Oliver, he would discover certain evidence unmistakably indicating the aforesaid sergeant's unlawful attempt to augment his earnings by engaging in the lucrative sideline of poaching, in which effort the writer had no doubt that the victim had met his untimely end. The letter was signed, "A Dutiful Citizen." "You have no clue to who this dutiful citizen's identity is?" Charles asked. "None, sir," the PC said. He held out his hand for the envelope. "Now, if you'll be so kind as to—" "One moment." Charles reached into an inside pocket of his bulky jacket and took out a small box. In it were bits of charcoal and folded sheets of lightweight, nearly transparent paper that he frequently used to make rubbings of certain interesting fossils. He took the letter to the window and proceeded to trace the script with a pen, taking care to reproduce it exactly as possible. The constable was alarmed. "With respect, sir, you can't be allowed to—" "I'll square it with Pell," Charles said over his shoulder. "Don't worry, old chap. I shan't get you into difficulties with the chief constable." "But that letter is evidence in a murder investigation. You can't—" "Of course it's evidence," Charles said soothingly. "That's why I must." He finished his work and handed the letter back to the constable. "Here you are. None the worse for a bit of copying." The constable's lips thinned. "Who are you, sir, to take it upon yourself to behave in this high-handed manner?" "Who am I?" Charles asked. He looked down at the note in his hand. "A man who is interested in justice," he said, and turned on his heel and left the room.